Every morning for 15 years, I cleaned the CEO's office before dawn. I knew exactly how Alexander Sterling liked his space: desk organized at perfect right angles, bright sunlight streaming through immaculate windows, not a speck of dust anywhere. The man was obsessed with appearances, with power, with showing the world just how successful he was. He never knew that I owned 60% of his company. My name is Michael Chen, though everyone at Sterling Enterprises knew me only as Mike the janitor. The quiet guy in the navy blue uniform who emptied their trash, polished their floors, and remained invisible despite being right in front of them. I started working here in 2008, right after the financial crisis hit. Not as a janitor. Back then, I was a major stockholder and board member of Sterling Enterprises. Alexander and I had built the company together from nothing, two ambitious kids fresh out of business school with big dreams and complementary skills. I had the technical knowledge and strategic vision. He had the charisma and sales expertise. But Alexander had something else too, a ruthless streak that I discovered too late. When the markets crashed and our stock plummeted, Alexander saw an opportunity. He conspired with other board members to dilute my shares, claiming it was necessary to save the company. They called an emergency meeting when I was overseas visiting my dying mother, knowing I couldn't make it back in time. By the time I returned, I had allegedly been voted out. Alexander spun a story about my emotional instability and erratic decision-making during the crisis. He even had documents showing I had signed away my voting rights, documents I knew were forged, but couldn't prove it at the time. I lost everything. My position, my reputation, my friends in the industry, all gone. Alexander's smear campaign was thorough. No other company would touch me. My savings dwindled as I fought legal battles I couldn't win against Sterling Enterprises' army of lawyers. That's when I decided to play the long game. I sold my remaining shares, a mere 5% of the company, and used the money to create an intricate web of shell companies. Then, working through various proxies and investment vehicles, I began quietly buying up Sterling Enterprises stock whenever it dipped. Alexander's aggressive expansion plans meant the company frequently needed capital, creating opportunities for my carefully hidden entities to increase their holdings. But I needed to be close, to watch and wait and understand every aspect of the company's operations. So I did something Alexander would never expect. I took a job as the building's janitor. He didn't recognize me. How could he? The ambitious young tech entrepreneur he had betrayed looked nothing like the middle-aged janitor in a worn uniform. I had gained weight, grown a mustache, learned to slouch and shuffle and make myself forgettable. When Alexander's eyes slid past me in hallways, I knew my disguise was perfect. For 15 years, I watched Sterling Enterprises grow. I listened to conversations executives had when they thought no one important was around. I read confidential documents left in trash bins, noting which projects succeeded and which failed. I learned about Alexander's management style, his weaknesses, his tendency to overextend the company's resources. I knew more about Sterling Enterprises than anyone, except unlike Alexander, I understood how things worked from the ground up. I knew which maintenance crews were underpaid and frustrated. I knew which middle managers were passed over for promotions despite their talent. I knew where every crack in Alexander's gleaming corporate facade was hidden. More importantly, I knew about the merger before anyone else. One night, while cleaning the boardroom after a late meeting, I found a crumpled note under the table. A preliminary term sheet from Global Tech Industries, outlining a potential billion-dollar acquisition of Sterling Enterprises. I smiled, knowing my time was finally coming. Alexander had been so focused on maintaining his image as a brilliant CEO that he had overleveraged the company. The only way forward was this merger, but he didn't realize that Global Tech's offer wasn't a generous lifeline. It was a carefully baited trap. Because what no one at Sterling Enterprises knew was that I also owned significant shares in Global Tech Industries, carefully hidden behind the same web of shell companies. I had spent years quietly influencing their leadership, positioning them to make this exact move. I continued my routine, watching Alexander strut around the office with increasing smugness as merger talks progressed. He loved holding court in the break room, bragging about how he had built Sterling Enterprises from nothing, how his brilliant leadership had attracted Global Tech's attention. "This merger will cement my legacy," he announced one morning to a group of fawning executives. Sterling Enterprises will become a global powerhouse. I was mopping the floor nearby, invisible as always. If they had looked closely, they might have noticed my slight smile. Alexander had no idea that his legacy was about to crumble. The merger announcement went public on a Tuesday. Sterling Enterprises stock soared as analysts praised the deal's potential. Alexander was everywhere. TV interviews, newspaper profiles, industry panels. The story of his success was irresistible. The visionary CEO who had guided his company through the 2008 crisis and built it into an acquisition target worth billions. All that remained was the final shareholder vote and signatures. Alexander was confident it was just a formality. After all, he believed he controlled the majority of voting shares through various allies and arrangements. That's when my carefully hidden web of companies began to emerge. It started small, one of my shell companies voting against the merger terms. Then another, and another. Alexander's team scrambled to identify these mysterious shareholders. But my lawyers had constructed an impenetrable maze of corporate entities spanning multiple countries. I watched Alexander's growing frustration from my janitorial closet. His perfectly organized office became chaotic as he held emergency meetings with his legal team. Papers were strewn everywhere, coffee cups left unwashed, window blinds askew. He stopped noticing whether his trash was empty or his floors were cleaned. One evening, while I was doing my usual cleaning rounds, I overheard him shouting into his phone in the otherwise empty office. "What do you mean you can't find out who owns these companies? I need to know who's blocking my merger. This deal has to go through. The bank loans are coming due, and without this merger." He stopped abruptly, realizing he had said too much, even though he thought he was alone. But I heard the fear in his voice. The house of cards he had built was starting to wobble. That night, as I cleaned his office one last time, I looked at the wall of awards and magazine covers celebrating Alexander Sterling's business genius. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, the invisible janitor would remind him of the partner he had betrayed 15 years ago. I adjusted his desk back to its perfect right angles, polished his windows until they gleamed, and emptied his trash one final time. In a few hours, Alexander Sterling would learn that appearances can be deceiving, and that true power doesn't always wear a designer suit. The morning of the merger signing, I didn't show up for my usual cleaning duties. Instead, I went to my small apartment and opened the closet I had kept locked for 15 years. Inside hung a perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit, not flashy, but impeccably cut and quietly expensive. I took my time getting ready, transforming myself from Mike the janitor into Michael Chen, majority shareholder. The mustache was gone, replaced by a clean-shaven face that had aged better than Alexander might have expected. I stood straight, letting go of the careful slouch I had maintained for so long. Amazing how a change in posture could erase years of invisibility. The signing ceremony was scheduled for 10 a.m. in Sterling Enterprises' main conference room. I arrived at 9:45, not through the service entrance I had used for 15 years, but through the gleaming main lobby. The security guard, Jim, who had always been kind to the cleaning staff, did a double take but couldn't quite place me. I took the executive elevator to the top floor, enjoying the subtle scent of the leather interior I had cleaned so many times. When I stepped out, Alexander's assistant Lisa was arranging water bottles in the conference room. "Excuse me, sir," she said politely, not recognizing the janitor who had emptied her trash every night. "The merger signing is a private event." I smiled. "I know, I'm a major shareholder." The conference room filled quickly. Alexander's legal team, the global tech executives, board members from both companies, all in their finest suits, all radiating confidence that this was just a formality. Alexander swept in at 9:55, his timing calculated to make an entrance. He looked surprised to see someone sitting in his usual seat at the head of the table, but covered it quickly with his practiced smile. "I don't believe we've met," he said, extending his hand. "Alexander Sterling." I stood slowly, savoring the moment. "Actually, Alex, we have." His hand froze midair. I watched the color drain from his face as recognition dawned. 15 years had passed, but in that moment he saw the young partner he had betrayed. "Michael," he whispered. "Hello, Alex. It's been a while." The room had gone deadly quiet. Alexander's legal team was exchanging worried glances. The global tech executives looked confused. "What? What are you doing here?" Alexander managed, trying to regain his composure. I pulled out a stack of documents. I'm here to vote on the merger. Or rather, my companies are here to vote. Phoenix Holdings, Sunrise Investments, Blue Ocean Capital. I believe you've been trying to identify these shareholders for weeks now. Alexander sank into a chair, his legs seemingly unable to hold him up. That's impossible. You sold your shares. I made sure. You made sure I sold my original shares. I corrected him. But I've been buying back into the company for 15 years. Through shell companies, through proxy investors, through every legal means available. Would you like to know how much I control now? His lawyers were frantically flipping through documents, their faces growing paler by the minute. 60%, I announced to the room. I own 60% of Sterling Enterprises, which means this merger doesn't happen without my approval. One of the global tech executives cleared his throat. Mr. Sterling, what is going on here? I turned to address the room. Let me tell you a story about how Sterling Enterprises really began. About two partners who built something amazing until one of them saw an opportunity during the 2008 crisis. For the next 20 minutes, I laid out everything. The emergency board meeting called when I was away. The forged documents, the smear campaign. I presented evidence I had gathered over 15 years, including testimonies from former board members who had finally admitted their role in the scheme. So you see, I concluded, Alexander Sterling isn't the brilliant CEO who built this company alone. He's a fraud who stole it from his partner and has been running it into the ground ever since. That's a lie. Alexander shot to his feet. I saved this company. I made it what it is today. Really? I raised an eyebrow. Is that why you're so desperate for this merger? Because the company is doing so well under your leadership? Or is it because the loans you took out for your aggressive expansion are coming due and you don't have the cash to cover them? The global tech team was muttering among themselves now. Their lead lawyer stood up. We need to pause this proceeding. If there are questions about Mr. Sterling's authority and the company's financial status. Oh, the merger can still happen, I said calmly, just not on Alexander's terms, and not with him as CEO. Alexander lunged across the table at me, all his carefully cultivated corporate polish evaporating in an instant. Two security guards, who I had personally watched him berate countless times, grabbed his arms. You can't do this, he shouted. This is my company. No, Alex, it never was, and now everyone knows it. The next few hours were chaos. The global tech team huddled with their lawyers. Sterling Enterprises board members, seeing which way the wind was blowing, quickly distanced themselves from Alexander. His loyal executives suddenly remembered urgent appointments elsewhere. By the end of the day, Alexander Sterling had been removed as CEO by an emergency board vote. The merger was postponed pending a full investigation of the company's finances and leadership, and I had been appointed interim CEO, though not before I revealed one final detail to the shell-shocked board. For the past 15 years, I told them, I've worked in this building as a janitor. I cleaned your offices, observed your operations, understood this company from the ground up. I know every strength and weakness, every loyal employee and every self-serving manager. I know who deserves promotion and who needs to go, and I know exactly how to fix what Alexander broke. The looks on their faces were priceless. Many of them had walked past me countless times, never making eye contact, never saying hello. Now they couldn't stop staring. That evening, after everyone had left, I went back to the janitorial closet one last time. I changed into my old uniform and did my rounds, saying goodbye to the night shift workers who had been my true colleagues for 15 years. You're really the new CEO? Jose, my fellow janitor, asked in disbelief. I am, and my first act will be raising wages for all maintenance and support staff. This company was built on your work, even if the executives never realized it. I ended my final shift in Alexander's former office, my office now. The same office I had cleaned every morning before dawn. I adjusted the desk to perfect right angles, not because Alexander demanded it, but because some habits die hard. A movement caught my eye. Alexander was in the hallway, escorted by security as he carried a box of personal items. He saw me in my janitor's uniform and stopped, his face a mix of fury and disbelief. 15 years, he said. You spent 15 years cleaning toilets just to get revenge. I smiled, straightening to my full height. No, Alex, I spent 15 years learning every detail of the company you thought you stole from me. The cleaning was just good, honest work, something you never understood. He left without another word, his expensive shoes clicking down the hallway one last time. The next morning, I arrived wearing my suit again, but I made sure everyone knew that my door was always open to any employee, regardless of their position, because I had learned something valuable during my years of invisibility. The real heart of a company isn't in its executive suite, but in the people who show up every day to do the work others don't see. Some of the board members suggested I hire a cleaning service for my office. I declined. Every morning, I still come in early to clean my own space. It keeps me grounded, reminds me of the lessons I learned during those 15 years of watching and waiting. Alexander Sterling now works as a mid-level manager at a small company across town. Sometimes I hear he tells people he used to be a CEO, but no one really believes him. After all, he just doesn't look the part anymore. As for me, I'm exactly where I belong, running the company I helped build, making it better than it ever was under Alexander's leadership. And every morning, when I adjust my desk to perfect right angles, I smile at the truth Alexander never understood. Sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one you don't see at all.